All right, here we go. I'm gonna try to break down some of these formulas that we have to memorize because I hate memorizing too much. My brain cells, I only have so many, and memorizing formulas is not a priority for me. So, anyways, let's start with slope, rise over run. I'm gonna break this down really briefly for those that, this is all review in basic. And maybe you have seen this before. I know I didn't though. So we start with the slope formula, right? And then going through, the high school, whatever, we had a point slope formula. So this is just slope. And then we had the point slope equation, which looked like this. And then, as I have already shown my preference, I like slope intercept the best. But when you first started algebra, you already had 3 right off the bat, and like they're all disjoint when they're really not. These are all the same exact thing. So, once you have one memorized, you could easily get to the next. Hopefully, slope has been drilled in your head and you're good to go with that. But let's quickly see. So we have this equation for slope, and then we get to point slope. Notice that all it involves is clear in the denominator, multiplying by this x2 minus x1. If I do that, these cancel, and I'm left exactly with this equation. Right now, I don't have x2 in here and y2 because I'm going for the general form at this point where my x and my y, they change, right? Along a line, we have many points. All we need for an equation is 1 point and the slope. And taking a step back, to get slope, we needed 2 points. So all in all, though, when I multiplied, notice they're identical, right? This side, m multiplied by x minus x1. This side, a y minus a y. Right? So now, taking this a step further, this does not look like y equals mx plus b at all. However, if I'm doing the slope intercept, I know then that my intercept, right, is some point where x is 0, and then we're just saying the y value is b. Why b, I don't really know. But if we plug that into the equation above as our point, right, x1 is 0, and b is our y, oops, b. So now I have y minus b equals m times x minus 0. Well, x minus 0 is just x. And if I add b to the right, I have y minus b, and once I add b, we're brought right back down to here. Okay, y equals mx plus b is not some magical, mystical formula. Where did they get that? Where did it come from? It comes directly from point slope, which came directly from slope. All right, last thing I wanted to elaborate on is often, I would get confused. Do I add or do I subtract? And let's look at slope really quick. If I had 2 points, any 2 points, right? Slope is saying rise over run. How far up do we need to go? How far over do we go? Okay. Well, if I drew in a grid, xy axes, our run is simply how far from one point to the next, right, on our x coordinate. Well, counting from one point to the next on a number line is really easy. Like let's say this was 2 and this was 5, right? Then I know I went over 3. Well, how do I get that? Subtraction, right? Took one value minus the next. Well, what does that look like here if I don't know that it's 5 minus 3? I know that this is x2. Oops. Okay, minus x1. That's my second x, that's my first x. By the way, that subscript 2 and 1, all that's referring to is the second point, right? The second x value, the second y value. Same thing with our y's. It's y2, it's y1, because I have 2 points, 1, x1, y1, and the second, x2, y2. It does not mean multiply by 2, it doesn't mean square, it simply means here's point number 1, here's point number 2. And similarly, if I want to know how much I rise, I'm taking this value up here, subtracting this value. If it were, 6 and 1, 6 minus 1 is 5. I don't know, it's y2 minus y1, hence we know slope formula is subtraction. Alright, I hope that clears up some of the basics.